So my name is Magnus Alm. I'm the CEO of Freelance Design. We primarily develop games for Facebook and mobile. Our biggest claim to fame would be the game called Icy Tower, which has been out for over 10 years now, but available on several different platforms. It's been downloaded and or played by over 40 million people across the globe. And we currently enjoy around 300,000 daily active users across our various platforms where we operate games.
Hi, I'm Andreas. I'm with Facebook and I work with our gaming partnerships team in Europe, and therefore I spend a lot of time with the local game developers and help them grow their business on our platform.
Hi there, my name is Jasper Smith. I'm from a company in the UK called PlayJam. We've spent the last heaven knows how many years building a games platform for TV, and we recently launched GameStick on Kickstarter, which I hope to talk to you about a bit later on.
Awesome, thank you very much. So the format of this particular panel goes like this. I'm going to throw a topic up on the screen. Each of our panelists has in front of them a sign that says hype. Hold it up. Hold up your hype sign. No, Andreas, your hype sign. There you go. And they have a real sign. So I'm going to throw out a topic. I'm going to give a quick introduction of the topic. Each panelist is going to secretly, without showing you, pick whether they say that this particular opportunity is a lot of hype or a real business opportunity. And all at the same time, they're going to show their signs. If all of the signs are the same, we'll probably move on to the next topic because there's nothing interesting to discuss there. If some of the signs are different, then we immediately start a death match to decide who gets to win. So let's practice real quick. Hype versus real deal. As a panel, what do you guys think? Is it hype or is it real? Go ahead, pick yours. Oh, that's really nice, isn't it? All right, well there's no conflict there, obviously, so hopefully they're all going to be right, and you guys will all come out of this presentation with some useful information that will help you think about the opportunities that exist in the game industry today. And with that, I'm going to start with the very, very first topic. Facebook. So 3 years ago, we were all here in these rooms at Casual Connect Hamburg going, holy crap, Zynga's making a lot of money. How are we going to capitalize on this? At that point, it really was the hottest thing in the game industry. It wasn't hype. People were making tons and tons of money, and we all migrated there and found out it was really hard to make money on Facebook. So today, Facebook has expanded to 1 billion people, and I want to ask my panel, what do you think? In the future, is Facebook as a platform for games, is that a lot of hype? Or is it still going to be a real opportunity? Andreas, where did you say you worked again? So why don't you tell us, Andreas, tell us about Facebook as the future of a game platform.
Well, I pretty much believe in Facebook as the future game platform to build on, and that applies to mobile and to desktop and to any other platform you can think of. So we have a lot of new developers coming on the platform every day, and especially European developers have had a very strong 2012, and 2013 will be even more aggressive. So right now we already have 7 out of our 10 biggest global developers coming from Europe. And this is just the beginning, I would say.
How about you, Jasper? You held up a big red X. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think it's hype. I mean, I'm pretty old, so I've seen these things come and go quite a lot. I think Facebook is in an extraordinary position today. If you take a 10-year view, there's been an awful lot of death in our industry, and my view would be that its power will wane over time, and that as a game platform, it will become too generalist to support a game community and gamers in a really focused way.
And Magnus, you held up both signs, which at some point, somebody in this presentation always figures out they can hold up both signs, but this is the first time we've ever done hype versus real deal, where the very first question was a double answer. Tell us what your ambivalence is there.
Yeah, that's probably because I'm Swedish. I'm kind of adverse to,
It's so neutral.
Conflicts. Yeah, very neutral. But yeah, I think, obviously a real deal for the big companies out there that has kind of found their spot on the platform. They're getting the good, nice treatment from Facebook, whereas some of the smaller developers, it's too late to get on this train. It's past us. It's way past us. And no. Yes, but
Andreas is very excited to counter that particular point of view, but hold on just a second.
Yeah, okay, so for us, I mean, we had a very early success on Facebook. We released the game in September 2009. Had around, it peaked around 2 million monthly active users, which at that time was a fairly big game. I think it was at least in the top 100 list of games on Facebook. The only emails we ever got from Facebook was, you're violating this policy. We're going to remove your game if you don't do X, Y, Z. And I think it was like 2.5 years later, we actually got in contact with someone saying like, thanks for developing a great game for our platform. That's kind of an interesting way to approach the developers. This is getting better now, by the way. It was way back. I just had to say it out loud once in front of a guy from Facebook. But I think if you want to get on that platform now and you don't have like a really well-funded company, you have to go very, very niche, like vegan pet hairdresser or something like that. The hipster pop song quiz only for the super, duper.
You guys should write that down. Vegan pet hairstylist game.
Yeah. Because that's the only way to find and attract a niche audience and way to kind of use the viral streams that actually still work in the platform.
Andreas.
Okay. Well, I would say, of course, there are big developers and they take a big share of the cake. But the cake is growing. And every day there are coming new developers, and we have stories like, very recent example, pretty simple, like a small developer from France that nobody knew maybe 3 months ago. And they made a big hit with Criminal Case in a genre, in the hidden objects genre, non-vegan, that reached like in the matter of about 6 weeks, 1 million MAU, and they 10x'd their revenues in that time. And they are now like hiring the shit out of like what is available in terms of developers and designers. They are really growing like crazy, and they have been nowhere a couple of months ago. So this is just one example. Or a couple of months before, we had Songpop from Fresh Planet. They didn't spend €1 single in ads, so they had no funding. And the same also applies to Criminal Case, and Pretty Simple. So they just grew because they applied the channels that we have, the organic and viral channels such as Open Graph, and they just iterated and optimized for it, and then they got a hit, and they became a very serious business overnight.
Yes, Magnus?
Yeah, but the song pop guys, I think actually Mark Zuckerberg featured their game up on like a keynote speech. I think they got a lot of support from you guys because they actually utilized the type of tools that you want the developers to use. I'm just saying that there are a lot of I've seen a lot of indie developers try to go on Facebook and trying to figure out the free-to-play, the social thing, and they just fail horribly because they think they can just slap on a free-to-play business model and just add, visit friend signs, and it's not going to work. And yeah, of course there are some success stories, but there are so many failure stories that we never hear about.
And of course, they exist. I don't say that every game that tries a little bit to make a living on our platform will be a big hit. So I'm sure there will be enough examples of failures, as with any other platform where companies fail on. It really depends on, of course, the genre, and then the quality of execution. And basically, yeah, it's a hit-driven business. So you cannot really plan for it, but good things happen. And if today I would not be working at Facebook, I would maybe start working on a midcore gaming company, creating midcore games on Facebook, because this is a genre that has so much room to grow. Like, I wouldn't really develop the maybe 300 or 400 or maybe 2,000 bubble shooter that exists out there just to have another bubble shooter in the game. With the bubble shooter, you really have to be a king.com to make a huge business out of it. So I agree on that. But if you really have a scrappy new game in a genre that is not totally overcrowded, and you get a couple of things right based on what we tell a developer in our developer wiki that is accessible for everybody, you can really get a successful business going.
Do you guys have any idea what the failure rate of games is at the moment? What's your experience, Magnus?
I guess we are kind of a bad example because we only did
0% for free lunch designs.
I mean, we did good on Facebook, and we're really happy with it. But I just think that there are a lot of people that I hear about, in the development community. Yeah. And obviously, as you say, of course, it's a hit or miss. This is the type of industry. But I just think that you need to think about what defines a social game. How do you work with this type of mechanics? Are you prepared to spend the money that is needed to constantly update and the support for everything?
So it's kind of interesting. I think this is one of the more controversial discussions that we've had on our first slide for Hype versus Real Deal. So I want to move on. I'll leave you as an audience with a couple of things to think about. First of all, there were, that the panel didn't discuss, there were two companies that presented this morning. Both Social Point and King.com talked about the new Facebook mobile API and the way they were tying in social experiences between the web and mobile to create an interesting cross-platform viral effect. Really interesting technology happening there that's relatively new on Facebook. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that along the lines of the Midcore social game opportunity, Andrew Shepard from Kabam is going to be speaking on that specifically tomorrow in this room. So if you don't already have that on your schedule, that might be some place to come, or that might be one of the sessions to come and take a look at, because obviously the guy from Facebook has just told you that Midcore is a big opportunity. So finding out a bit more about that might be a wise idea. Let's move on to the next topic. So we touched on this a couple of times in the conversation about Facebook, and that's this idea of the free-to-play business model, which of course is anything but free, right? Sure, you can play for free, but you're not going to have nearly as good an experience as if you pay. I play a lot of free-to-play games, and I pay for almost every single one of them because you just hit a point pretty quickly where you want to be better, you want to go further, you want to go faster, and that's what free-to-play does best. There's a lot of costs associated with that. It's a hard business model. What do you guys think? Is free-to-play something that's here to stay? Or is it just a phase that we're going to go through and move back to the old days, the good old days where you launched a game and that was the end of your product cycle instead of the beginning? Wow. 100% real, huh? Why do you like it?
I think, it's an extraordinary mechanism for revenue generation, which is beautiful. But the issue is, it's virtually impossible to get right. And so, every investment I've made into games companies, every game company has got it wrong for the first year and a half. And the mechanics and the science and the logistics of getting it right, being able to support a game in real time, I think, makes it virtually impossible. But it's certainly a massively real opportunity.
So it's a real opportunity that's virtually impossible to capitalize. That's what you're saying.
Maybe it should be high. It's tough.
Anything to add to that?
Well, I agree that it is challenging if you come from a pay-to-play world to pivot to the free-to-play approach. But once you get the metrics right, I think you can really strive and succeed in this area and be very successful, get a lot of installs and monetize very, very well, while giving at the same time the consumer a lot of more transparency and choice to really decide on which games they spend their money on.
Got it. So the next topic actually that I have up here is games as a service. And I'd like to ask the panel whether you have the same answer for games as a service as you did for free to play. Is it hype or is it real? And is that because you feel like the free to play model is real and so therefore games as a service is an outcropping of that approach? You can't do one without the other? Yes. All right, we won't spend too much time on that. How about this? Everybody recognizes the Bulldog, right? The 900-pound gorilla that dominated the social game space for the first 2 years of the social games. And I actually noticed a slide in an earlier presentation today in which Zynga's game was not the #1 game. They were the #1 publisher, obviously, with 250 million or so users, so by a long margin. But I believe King.com's Bubble Witch Saga was actually above Zynga's Farmville 2 on one of the top 10 lists that was shown a little bit early today. So Zynga's stock price is in the toilet. What's going to happen with Zynga? Is Zynga hype now or real? And I know, Andreas, you said you're not going to answer, so you're not going to hold up a sign. But what about the other two? Awesome. Tell me why you think Zynga's hype.
I think, looking at the management exodus, looking at its corporate position, looking how many shareholders are out to kill the thing, looking at Marcus Pincus's position at the moment, looking at its traffic, its the sort of quality of games that are coming through, the massive attrition in staff. It's pretty, just from a corporate perspective, it's hard to turn that around. It's hard to make that something really tangible in the future. So my thing would be, or my belief would be that it will trundle along, it will do pretty well, it'll probably have a few hits, but ultimately, is it a stock to back? Is it something you'd really get involved with, from my perspective?
And Magnus?
Yeah, I think they're kind of, right now, very much undervalued. I think they have a lot of good possibilities simply because their, traction, the amount of users they actually kind of control, if you will. I think there's a lot of talent there still, a lot of, management leaving the company, obviously, but I think if there's anyone that have a good chance of going into the mobile, sector, I think they really have the power to do so if they want to go there even stronger than they have before. I'm not sure how we're going to do in the long run, but I definitely don't think we have seen the last of them. I think they have a lot of, a few tricks up their sleeve.
So, Jasper, if you had a piece of advice, if it was your job to fix Zynga and make them relevant in the future, what would you do? What would you tell Mark to do differently?
I think, he's in a really tough position. I think he's an extraordinary guy for what he's done, and but it's very difficult to take that business forward without a senior management change. I think, you probably need to change Marcus. Right?
So your advice would be fire yourself and get somebody new?
Yeah, I think, at the end, these businesses are driven from the top, and the culture that's there is not being conducive to creativity and to running that business. Hence the exodus. And there's more unhappy people leaving Zynga than there are happy people, and so my view is just not from a platform point of view, not from a traffic point of view today, but just from a corporate point of view, it's broken in the same way that perhaps Adobe, you might look at Adobe and say Adobe is actually quite a broken organization trying to fix itself, and I think those things are really tough to fix.
Great discussion. So let's talk about data-driven game design. This was something that we talked quite a bit about a couple of years ago, and the conversation around it has slowed down. People are still talking about analytics and how important it is to listen to your customers, but people aren't talking so much about data-driven design anymore. So what do you guys think? Is data-driven design something that's gone by the wayside, or is it still really important? Andreas, tell us why you think it's important.
Well, it's a very important criteria to spend some time on, but it alone will not really make a game successful. But without any data-drivenness, you cannot succeed in a highly competitive, free-to-play world. So I guess a company like Vuga is one of the best examples here, and needless to say, Facebook as well, because we analyze a lot of data on how people use our product to make it better and to improve the way people can just leverage the service. And if you don't really look into the data and you just you just trust your gut feeling, which is of course something to really bet a lot on, and you should not neglect it. But if you only believe on your presumptions or assumptions, then you cannot get to 100% or beyond. You have to iterate.
Magnus, you had a comment.
Yeah, this is kind of on the anecdotal level, but it's kind of fun because we polish these games so much now that after a while, you don't even know why you keep playing them. Some of them. I had an incident some weeks ago. I was looking over the shoulder of my colleague who was playing Candy Crush Saga, and he kind of just looked back at me and said, "You know what? I don't even know if I'm having fun or I'm just addicted to this game." And then he went on and to play the game some more. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's kind of what's your perception of fun is. Is it just something you do every day and like to do? But, you know, how do you define fun? So, I mean, I play the game too, but I get so furious. Every now and then just want to throw my phone in the wall. But is that fun? You know, I guess.
Throwing your phone at the wall is awesome.
Yeah.
It's really good. Did you have something to add, Jasper?
Not really. I mean, I think, you know, data's used to, you know, by almost every walk of life now, and you know, I think in game design it's essential. I think you know, there's no other way, there's no other metric. The issue is, does it always kill creativity? And you know, there's quite a lot of examples of games that are massively well designed from a data point of view, but not great from a game point of view, you know, from a playing point of view.
So you mentioned Wooga. Timo, raise your hand. Raise it high. Raise it high. This man's going to be talking about the heart side of the data and heart equation tomorrow in this room as well. So I would encourage you to come see Timo, because he's not only talking about a really important topic that he's passionate about, but he's really funny to listen to as well. All right, let's talk about the midcore, this hard to define audience of people who are not casual and they're not hardcore. They might be men, they might be women. They might be really addicted gamers, they might be only occasional gamers. Nobody seems to be able to actually define what midcore is. Is midcore hype or is it real? Magnus, your hesitation?
Well, you know, I think it certainly has a future, but, you know, seeing it from a developer perspective, I wouldn't go near it because of the user acquisition costs. You know, you would need to be really well funded, and I think it's really, perhaps the cake is getting bigger, but so are the guys eating that cake. I think that, you know, when I see Kabam or whatever raising $100 million or whatever, it's, you know, it's a really competitive space. So if I were to go there, I would like an investor that has, you know, a strong IP portfolio, so I could lower my user acquisition cost by slapping on some nice, you know, Lord of the Rings IP, say, on the game, and utilize the same technology over and over again. So, you know.
You mean like The Hobbit or something like that?
I don't want to go into exact details, but you know, I think I'm not sure if it's a niche or if it's going to be really big, but some people seem to think it's going to be really big. So
what do you think? GameStick seems kind of like it might be a mid-core device. Do you guys? What do you guys think about the mid-core?
Yeah, we're pretty bullish on it, and I guess you know, you see the attrition rate in the console market, and you see the, you know, the amount of redundancies that have happened there for people that are used to making sort of AAA, you know, hardcore games, and you know, there's several examples of studios that we've been working with. Hutch in the UK is one of them, which is, you know, 10 guys that were made redundant that effectively built a business to build, you know, mid-core games, and they've had extraordinary success. And I agree with you, Magnus. It's a tough game to get right. But there's an example of a business that did it from the ground up, had a great hit on iOS, and yeah, so we're really bullish. And yeah, from a GameStick point of view, that's what it's there to do: is support that sort of mid-core emerging market on the basis that the hardware differentiation between high-end and mid-range is now pretty low. So we're bullish on it.
Andres, you had actually specifically mentioned the mid-core a little bit earlier in this presentation, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you think the mid-core is.
Well, a lot has been said already. So I agree, for example, with Magnus when he says that, of course, it takes more initial time and investment of resources to get a mid-core title out, rather like compared with a bubble shooter kind of genre game. But then, at a later point, you will face less competition and you will have access to more competitive ways to acquire users, and then users that actually monetize better than the average casual user. So you will not strive for something like a 9 million DAU game, but you could really have a good business going with maybe 500,000 or even less DAU that has like ARPU rates that are far beyond what we see with casual games. It is, I think right now, when you talk to people that are not in the gaming industry, it is showing pretty clearly that most of the Facebook users out there, they associate the topic games on Facebook with something like Farmville or other casual titles. But nobody would really mention any like mid or even hardcore titles or FPS or whatnot. So it is just not like at a sort of tipping point yet, but we see like massive successes from also again like European developers, not only Kabam and Kickstarter. Of course, they are like the ones that really stand out. But if you look at Plarium from Israel, they also had like 2 or 3 games already in the genre that performed quite well. Not to reveal much, but I think this year will be like massive in terms of new launches in Midcore on the platform.
It's kind of funny, about 10 years ago we were struggling to define what casual games were, because all that we had as a definition for it was they weren't hardcore, so casual was not hardcore, and now it seems like the only solid description I can get from Midcore is that it's not casual. So I think this one's going to be near and dear to your heart. Let's talk about Kickstarter, maybe crowdfunding as an idea. Is this hype or is this real?
I think it's... so we need to do our thing.
Yes, you should vote.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's pretty real. You know, we had a great campaign. I think games are extraordinary on Kickstarter in that I think they are the second most backed genre, but I think it's like 83 million last year. So, you know, that's an extraordinary endorsement of the industry. And what's fascinating is people are sort of backing hope. And, you know, so it's a very different dynamic. And so I think from a games perspective, as long as you can sell your dream, it's a you know, an extraordinary platform. And, you know, I think there's about 5 million people now who've sort of pledged through Kickstarter.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's the cool thing about it is kind of you have to sell a very compelling story. You have to get people kind of, you know, involved in it, and when they do, they want to share the news. They want to tell the people. They're kind of proud of, you know, share the link. I've backed this project. I remember when the Tim Schafer thing, you know, the Double Fine adventure game was up. I was like, oh my God. Is this happening for real? He's gonna make a real adventure game, like when I was young, like when I was a kid and just, you know, had so much fun. And it's, for me, it's like taking part in that story is the most important thing. I don't even read the updates. I don't have time to read the updates about the project. I was just so excited about taking part, become a bit of history, you know, a part of history. And I think that's the cool thing about it. It gives people that feeling.
Absolutely.
So you guys think that 5 years from now, people will still be backing Kickstarter projects for games?
Yeah, I don't know if it will be via Kickstarter. I mean, they're just a platform. So, you know...
I said that kind of like Kleenex or Xerox.
Okay.
You know.
Well, the idea of gifting, which effectively is what it is, well, the idea of gifting game relevance in our society on a worldwide basis, yeah, I think it will. I think it's something... you know, fundamentally great about the experience. And, you know, I guess what we're all waiting for is Facebook to go, here we go, we've got the same platform. And, you know, that then becomes a crowdfunding platform of extraordinary scale. You know, if you've got what have you got, 1 billion, roughly? You know, that's a big platform. Yeah. You know, versus 5 million here. So
Facebook's going to allow crowdfunding? Is that what we just heard? Got a crowdfunding platform on Facebook? Coming down the line.
Why not?
Good ideas are born here.
So I have noticed that I think I have had more job offers in the last year than in the rest of my entire career combined. And at first I thought it was because I just happened to not be working for anybody. But as it turns out, there are this whole free-to-play games as a service thing has created an enormous hiring frenzy, especially here in Europe. Do you think that's going to continue? Hype or real?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Yeah, I get that.
All right, Magnus, what swung you toward the real side? Was it just because you didn't want to be like everybody else on the panel?
I don't have like this very... I've just been seeing a lot of companies doing so well, but I think it's so... The mobile and the social sector is going so well right now. That's where a lot of new startups is growing and coming from. And for me personally, I think it's just awesome to see a lot of good people, you know, ending up with good companies. I think it's really good for the industry because it will attract a lot of talent in the long run to the industry as a whole. While it might be a pain in the ass for us running the businesses, I think it's really good for the business as a whole. And I've been seeing some pretty strange kind of recruitment campaigns. I saw one company in the US, obviously, trying to attract new programming talent by offering $10,000 wrapped in bacon and a spear gun as a sign-on bonus for new recruits. A spear gun? A spear gun and $10,000 wrapped in bacon.
Fantastic.
You can keep the $10,000, obviously.
I'm for bacon. Yeah, so no, I think we're going to see more of that happening.
So I noticed that the two of you sort of split the line there. You thought it would maybe a little hype, maybe a little real. Talk about that, Andreas.
Well, I totally agree that right now a lot of hiring activity is being carried out, but it can change like very, very quickly. Like again, like hit-driven businesses, they have ups and downs. So if a developer today needs a lot of headcount to add to their workforce, maybe at some point their game success will not continue, and then people will have to move on. Yeah, I think overall, like the cake is growing. So we might see still a lot of fluctuation and movement in the workforce, maybe more than in other sectors. But Europe is definitely growing, and even Facebook is growing in Europe. So we are hiring people in our new London engineering office, and so we look for a lot of developers. So check out our career page.
And I also think this has something to do, you know, with it's a global world. People are not so adverse to, you know, move across the Atlantic Ocean and try out new things. And I also think that's okay, it has some downsides from an environmental perspective, but in the kind of whole exchange of ideas, you know, and concepts and cultural values, I think it's awesome.
It's also a lot harder to stop working on games when you have a game as a service, right? In the old days, if you launched a game and it didn't do well, you just sort of forgot that it ever existed and you repurposed that team towards something else. It seems like the whole industry, from a product perspective, its growth is limited by the good people that you can bring on board to start a new team, to start a new project.
Very much so, yeah.
So I tried to organize the topics in this sort of starting with today and moving further and further towards the strange and weird outliers that everybody's questioning today. And we're starting to get into some of those things that exist in the conceptual future. You know, we're all familiar with the Kinect and this idea of being able to move your hands and control a game. There's a number of other companies that are providing new technologies for that lower the hardware barrier. The Kinect is a pretty expensive and technologically advanced idea, but a company called XDR has got a technology that allows you to do that with any 2D camera. So what do you guys think? Is motion controls, is gesture-based kind of control, is this something that you expect to see a big, to have a big influence on games over the next couple of years?
Couple of years?
Yeah.
You said 2 years?
Yeah, let's say 2 years.
Well, that's a tricky one. 2 years is tricky, but I'll go for it.
I know it is. That's why I picked 2 years. All right, so Magnus, you're the red X here. Tell us what you think.
You know, I've been seeing so much kind of gimmicky, crappy kind of peripherals, and it doesn't really work out. You know, you play it once with your family on Christmas, and then you throw it in the, you know, wherever you throw your old stuff. And then it never goes out again. Obviously, you know, the big console manufacturers are working on it, and they're believing it's a big part of the future. I think it would play some form of integral part in the next generation of consoles, but I'm not sure if you're going to see this massive wide adoption of it. I don't think so. I think it's, so far I've seen a lot of, you know, half-assed ideas actually, but in the long run, yes, I
Beyond
think
2 years.
Yeah, but I think like 5-10 years perhaps.
Yeah.
And why?
I mean, I think man-machine interfaces currently are pretty poor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we work with these fairly clunky tools, and whether they're gamepads, mouse, keyboards, or whatever. And so there's a huge movement to try and change that through whether it's gesture or you know, or whatever. But so I guess, you know, my long-term prognosis will be the same as Magnus, is that you know, we will change that and we'll fix that, and motion is a part of it. It's pretty. I don't know if you've ever seen the new Samsung TVs that you try and change channel with motion. I mean, it's more effort. It's more effort to do that than it is to just, you know, use your thumb. So there are a whole plethora of examples that are, you know, where it's used in the wrong instances. But there are some games that work actually really well with it, that are quite fun. There's a great football game actually that works really well and stuff like that. So, you know, I think it will come. I think what Oculus is doing is quite interesting with their 3D goggles. There's a whole raft of those types of projects. There's some beautiful products being created that enable you to sort of use very small gestures to control quite big movements, which are really interesting. So look, it's happening, and I think you know, I'm a great believer in it. I think, you know, let's go 10 years forward, and I think we'll be doing stuff in quite a different way. I think actually what Steam's doing is quite interesting. You know, what trying to do. So yeah, I'm a believer.
Andreas, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm a believer as well, and I believe in the improvement and advancement of the technology, which is of course mediocre right now, and I agree that it's easier to change using the remote control the channel of your TV rather than having a stupid gesture. But I think motion control in combination with voice control and voice recognition will be like improved pretty noticeable in the coming years, like 2 to 5 years, I would say. And in the home entertainment environment, I think it will play a decisive role, or a more dominant role. And looking back at what Jens said today in the morning in his presentation, I think it's really about finding the right user interface for a certain gaming genre, and maybe new genres will evolve that we don't have right now. So like with the FPS that is more or less like attached to the PC or maybe the console, maybe we will have new genres come up just with this new way on how to interact.
So I think in the interest of time, I'm going to speed through the rest of these and try to zero in on maybe just one person who happens to be who happens to disagree. This particular topic has been debated for a couple of decades, maybe. What's the future of publishing? And in particular, I think I've seen there's been an acceleration of the sentiment that things like Facebook and the ability to acquire customers directly through other channels as well is going to be the death of the publishing business. And certainly we've seen a recent example of that with a longtime publishing giant, THQ, is just gone. What do you think about publishing? Is publishing here to stay, or is it going away? Andreas, you have the outlying answer there.
Yeah, so hype, I would say, when it comes to games on Facebook, because on Facebook, honestly, you don't need a publisher in between you and the platform. It's just too easy to get your game out. While on consoles, for example, and other maybe more proprietary platforms, you might still want to work with a publisher that is experienced and has the connection and relationship with the platform provider to get you off the ground.
How about cloud gaming? So we've seen at least one massive implosion. We've seen one massive sale. We've seen this beginning to trickle its way into places like NVIDIA and Big Fish in the casual arena. What do you think about gaming in the cloud, being able to store your games elsewhere and just access them? Is that hype or is that real?
Is this 2 years too?
It can be, sure, 2 years. All right, give me your reason, Jasper. Why?
Cost too much. Completely uneconomic on any level. If it's successful, it dies. So if you want to make games that aren't successful, use cloud gaming. If you want to make successful games,
if it's successful, it dies. Yeah. That's an awesome soundbite. Thank you.
Yeah, it's too expensive. And NVIDIA are actually doing a lot of great work on trying to support. I think 24 games concurrently is what they announced at CES with Grid. Even 24 instances of a game is expensive per blade. That's a lot of.
When you think about that on the scale of something like Facebook, 24 instances is nothing. Right?
And Gabe Newell did a great speech on that. And effectively, you have to have that blend of, network and out-of-reach memory, and you've got to have, capacity on the end of the network.
Gotcha. What about intra-platform games, or I guess it would be inter-platform gaming? So that was talked about today by Social Point. It was talked about today by King.com. Is this something that's real, or is this something that's so limited in application as to be not real at all? All right, nothing of interest there. Let's move on. Social casino. Gambling fake money for nothing. Social casino, is this real? Is this a real business opportunity, or is this something that's going to go away? Come on, throw the X. Yes. Tell us about why the X is in your hand.
Of course, this is very uncertain, but if the real gambling takes off, then I think they will be left behind. But obviously, they will probably have a way of converting their existing games portfolio to the gambling versions of their games, but it might be that it just dies away as a fad when everyone is actually playing for real money.
So you think the real money gambling is what's going to push this out push this into the hype category?
It might be so.
So here's something that's near and dear to PlayJam's heart. The light console. Now, I made that up. You guys may not think of GameStick as a light console at all, but I think of it as a low-cost, low barrier to entry way to basically take your console gaming experience with you wherever you go. Is this hype? Is this real? Wow, I'm shocked that you think it's real, Jasper. Magnus, why do you think it's not?
I love the concept. Some of my friends might like it. But I think it's not a hype. I think it would be a relevant market for some, but I think it's a niche product. Perhaps that niche is so big that it would make sense to make games for it specifically. But the Ouija was, I think, backed by, was it 50,000 people? I don't know how many.
Yeah.
That's still not really a user base for me to put my games onto. It's not worth the effort even if it's just 2 weeks of work, because there are so many platforms that said, just takes a little time to implement it. So I'm not sure if it's going to grow into a real, segment, a true platform that's worth the effort for developers.
You want to react to that, Jasper?
I think it's about a wider shift. It's not about a device. So the device, our device is a physical piece of hardware on the back of a games network, and it's much more about a more fundamental transition towards open ecosystems for TV. And so I guess our view is that over the next, there's what, $79 billion of software revenue generated by the TV today through console, through a closed ecosystem. So our bet was if you could make that a completely open ecosystem where developers could self-publish, and you could create a reference platform that you could give to any device manufacturer in the world, you could create a pretty substantial network. So I guess our view is that it's a pretty big nut to crack. There's some really interesting opportunities, a lot of growth there. No single device can do it, so it's about multiple devices.
Which leads us to the next topic, which is the invisible console, the one that you can't even see. When you think about platforms or technologies like AirPlay or Webaloo's technology, they're a company out of Israel that's doing a similar thing using HTML5. Is this sort of multi-screen connected invisible console, is this going to come to pass? Is this something that you guys feel like is a real opportunity? A change of heart, Magnus. What's different?
I want it to be real. This is something I really want to believe in, and I think it's a bit different because, you know, these days everyone walks around with one of these. They don't walk around with a micro console, they don't have one in their home, but everyone has one of these, so the one that, you know, cracks that nut, I think, is in for a...
And I think I would like to add, this is what will kill the cloud computing or cloud gaming industry, because the more time that passes, the more powerful these small devices in your pocket will get. And then you don't need the remote computing power. You have a powerful GPU in there, and then you just hook it up to the big screen, and you're all set.
So Jasper, I'm interested to hear what the transition plan is for GameStick from the world that we talked about just a minute ago into this one. It sounds like
sure.
they're
So
related.
if you look at essentially what we built was a virtual console, which is operational on, you know, TVs, multiple devices and stuff like that. So and we've got companion apps that enable you to play games or control games on multiple devices and stuff. So, you know, this is the absolute heart of our business. The issue with this is making that user experience really, really, you know, fantastic to use. And the easiest way of doing that in the first instance was actually to create a physical controller that gave a unified experience across those different screens. So, you know, whether that's using Miracast or AirPlay or anything like that. So it's really about the different control mechanisms. And so I think what will happen pretty soon is you'll choose what screen you want to play on and what device you want to use as a controller. And our bet was actually if you could build the logic into the controller and build the componentry into the controller to control the game, actually the screen doesn't really matter, you know, whether I play on my mobile or whether I play on my big screen or whatever.
So we're getting really close to being done with this. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, right? I look at the number of televisions that are out there that are now becoming connected to the internet, having their own processing power, having their own app stores, and I see a very fragmented industry with some control issues, but I also see a lot of potential. What about you guys? Hype or real? Games on televisions connected to the internet?
Go for those.
Yeah.
All right, Andreas, why don't you start off this time?
Well, I also, like, I think it's a similar topic. Like, I think the last two slides and this slide, they could be also on one slide. I think what really is what really matters here is which technology and which standard will prevail. And and then it will be either the smart TV, which will have enough capability to run these things, or it will be the phone, or it will be a mini console. I think it's just about the scale of the platform that has to be big enough for a developer like Magnus to decide, yes, I will put some money on and I will spend resources on developing for that platform. I don't have a specific preference on any of these. I somehow believe, like maybe in the last slide, the most, where we have the phones working as the processing unit. But who knows? Like it's really hard to predict.
So you had just an X, no check to go along with it. Why is that?
I thought it was like the 2-year span.
No,
but
too many problems to solve in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I don't see it happen. You know, during the next 2 years. I really want it to happen, but I was shopping for a TV some years ago, and I think, yeah, there must be these kind of great TVs with a lot of cool apps and stuff. But I was just, so underwhelmed that I said, okay, I'll go back to not own a television and just watch on my computer instead.
Got it. So I'm going to skip this one for now, because we're going to have a whole day about it on the third day. There's going to be lots of discussion about this one. The last thing that I wanted to sort of wrap up on, and I threw this in there, which is my observation has been that we have all been sprinting for at least the last 3 or 4 years to try and keep up with changes on the Facebook platform, Android exploding, new devices to support from Apple every 6 months. Do you guys feel like this pace of change is going to continue, or are things going to stabilize and give us all a chance to breathe? So let's say big changes continue is real, things are going to stabilize is hype. You think it's going to keep going, huh? All right, well, there you go, guys. We're going to have to keep sprinting. I want to say thank you very much to our panel for coming today and talking about some of these tough topics. Can I get an applause for the panel, please?